Everyone at the shooting range laughed at her old rifle until she pulled the trigger and made them all eat their words. You ever notice how sometimes you can feel when you're being judged even before a single word gets said? That's exactly what hit Danielle Foster the moment she stepped inside Sun Valley shooting range in Mesa, Arizona. She wasn't wearing tactical boots or a flashy jacket lined with patches. No fancy rifle case, no sunglasses tucked onto her head. Just Danielle in her scuffed sneakers, a plain gray hoodie that had seen better days, and a soft green backpack slung over her shoulder. The range smelled like oil and gunpowder, loud pops echoing off the concrete walls. Most folks were busy with their targets, but a few heads still turned. The looks weren't friendly. They weren't mean either, just that tight little smirk people get when they think they know exactly who you are. Danielle kept her head low and moved toward an empty lane near the back. She carefully unzipped her bag, pulling out an old bolt-action rifle. Nothing shiny or new. The worn wood of the stock looked like it had 1,000 stories carved into it. At the counter, a tall man with a ball cap and a trimmed beard leaned in to whisper to another regular. His voice wasn't quiet enough. "New girl? Looks like she brought a museum piece." They chuckled, not even bothering to hide it. Danielle heard them. Of course she did, but she didn't flinch. She just loaded a few rounds with slow, steady hands. She knew places like this, knew these types of people even better. But if they thought today was going to be a show, they had no idea what was coming. But little did they know, the real show hadn't even started yet. The first shot she fired cracked through the air, clean, sharp, and steady. No drama, no flair, just a neat little hole dead center on the target. Most folks didn't even notice, but one guy did. A younger man in a red flannel shirt, maybe mid-20s, leaned over from the next lane, smirking like he was sharing a joke no one asked for. "Nice shot, Grandma," he said loud enough for everyone around to hear. Danielle didn't even glance at him. She chambered another round with the same calm hands and squeezed off a second shot. Another bullseye. Still, she said nothing. Let them think what they wanted. Talking had never gotten her anywhere worth going. Behind her, the whispers started to build, soft at first, then louder as more people took notice. A woman in a tactical vest nudged her buddy and laughed under her breath. "You think she even knows what she's doing? Probably watched a YouTube video before she got here. Maybe she thinks it's like bowling," her buddy added, chuckling. Danielle stayed locked in. Breath in, exhale, pull, one hole after another, close enough to touch. A short, stocky man with a clipboard. The range manager, judging by the way he barked orders, spotted the tiny crowd starting to gather near her lane. He adjusted his hat and strode over, wearing a grin that was trying too hard. "You new here?" he asked louder than necessary. Danielle gave a small nod without looking up. "First time here?" The man chuckled like he didn't quite believe her. "Well, we're holding a little friendly competition today. You're welcome to sign up if you want, for fun." There it was, the challenge dressed up as an invitation. Danielle quietly clicked the safety on her rifle and rested it against the booth wall. "Maybe," she said, voice calm and even. The man gave a tight smile before walking back toward the front desk, already writing her off in his head. But as Danielle picked up a pen to put her name on the sign-up sheet, the air in the room started to shift just a little. The sign-up sheet was simple, a few names scribbled down, mostly regulars, mostly men, the kind who carried themselves like they already knew they'd win. Danielle held the pen for a moment longer than necessary, the cheap plastic feeling awkward between her fingers. She hadn't competed in anything since the army, hadn't touched a rifle outside her workroom in almost 3 years. "You don't have to prove anything," she told herself. "You didn't come here for this." But then she heard it again, the low hum of laughter from the flannel shirt guy and his friends. "Bet she can't even hit the broadside of a barn," he muttered, not even trying to lower his voice. Danielle pressed the pen harder against the paper than she meant to, scrawling her name across the bottom of the list. "Danielle Foster, you sure about that, ma'am?" the man with the clipboard asked as she handed it back. "I'm sure," she said simply. The man gave a small shrug, the way someone does when they think they're doing you a favor by humoring you. "All right, we'll call your name when it's your turn. Good luck out there." Danielle went back to her booth and began checking over her rifle. It was an old friend to her, battered but reliable, a tool that had once been part of her every breath, every heartbeat, as she wiped down the scope with a soft claw. An older woman with salt and pepper hair, one of the rare few not smirking, paused at the lane beside her. "You any good, honey?" she asked in a low voice. Danielle gave a half smile. "Used to be." The woman chuckled, not unkindly. "Well, sometimes used to be is just sleeping, not gone." Danielle nodded once, tucking that line into her back pocket like a lucky coin. The intercom crackled to life above them. "All right, folks, gather up. Competition's about to start." Targets were being reset. Rifles were being cleaned. People were stretching their arms like they were prepping for a boxing match. Danielle closed her eyes for a brief second. She could almost smell the red dust of Afghanistan, hear the calls in her earpiece, feel the bone-deep ache of her old life. But when she opened her eyes, all she saw was a paper target waiting at 100 yards, clean and still. But as she tightened the strap of her gloves, Danielle knew this wasn't just about a prize. It was about something she hadn't let herself feel in years. The crowd bunched up near the benches, energy buzzing like a soda can, ready to pop. A young employee in a navy polo grabbed a clipboard and called out the first name. "Jason Weller, you're up." The man in the red flannel, Jason, winked at Danielle as he walked by. "Watch and learn, sweetheart." He swaggered up to the firing line, twirling his semi-automatic rifle, a little for show. His shots rang out fast and loud, punching through the targets with decent accuracy. The regulars clapped and hollered after he finished, high-fiving him as he strutted back to his seat. Next few shooters did all right, some better, some worse. Nobody extraordinary, just enough swagger to keep the noise alive. Danielle kept her head low, cleaning the bore of her rifle one more time, checking every screw, every seam. She wasn't nervous. She wasn't even angry. She just wanted it done. Then the name called out over the speaker, slicing right through the chatter. Danielle Foster. The room didn't exactly fall silent, but the sound dipped. That slight drop you feel before something important happens. Danielle stood up and slung her rifle over her shoulder. Her boots made small, steady sounds against the concrete as she walked to the line. "Bet she doesn't even know how to load it," Jason said, laughing with his buddies. Someone else mimicked fumbling hands, pretending to drop an invisible rifle. Danielle didn't say a word. She placed her rifle down, adjusted the scope, and set her stance. It was automatic, muscle memory from years she rarely let herself think about. The rules were simple. 5 shots, moving targets, fast pace, points for accuracy and speed. "Whenever you're ready," the employee called. Danielle inhaled through her nose and let it out slowly. The world tunneled down, the laughter, the chatter, the flashing cameras. It all blurred. First target zipped across from left to right. Danielle squeezed. One shot dead center. Second target jerked upward. Another shot straight through the heart. By the third target, the range had gone quiet. No more jokes, no more snickers. Fourth, fifth, every bullet found its mark with a grace so effortless it almost looked fake. When she finished, Danielle clicked the safety back on and stepped away from the booth like she was setting down a coffee cup. No celebration, no big reaction. The manager cleared his throat. "Och," hardly at the front. "Highest score so far," he mumbled, glancing at the digital display that showed a near-perfect score. Jason stared, mouth hanging open. His buddies shifted awkwardly, finding other things suddenly very interesting on the walls. Danielle didn't gloat, didn't even smile. She simply picked up her rifle, slung it back over her shoulder, and headed for the benches without looking at anyone. But even as she sat back down, she knew the real silence was just beginning, and it was louder than any gunshot could ever be. The next few shooters came and went, but nobody was really paying attention anymore, not after Danielle. Every loud bang that missed, every target that wobbled instead of dropped clean, just made the room feel heavier. Folks who'd laughed earlier now watched Danielle out of the corners of their eyes, not with mockery, but with a strange, uncomfortable kind of curiosity. Jason Weller sat stiffly on the bench beside his friends, jaw clenched so hard you could see the muscles twitch. Every now and then he threw a glance at Danielle like he was trying to figure out who or what he'd just witnessed. Danielle sat still, legs crossed at the ankle, hands folded loosely in her lap. Her rifle leaned against the wall beside her like it wasn't even important. A woman wearing a pink camo hat walked up, holding 2 coffees. You want one? She asked hesitantly, holding a cup out. Danielle looked up, smiled politely, and shook her head. Thanks, but I'm good. The woman bobbed her head quickly and skewered off, her cheeks flushing red. She hadn't offered coffee to anyone else. The final names were called. The leaderboard blinked on the screen behind the front counter. Rows of scores stacked up neatly. Danielle's name sat at the very top. A clean, cold fact staring everyone in the face. The manager walked to the center of the range, clipboard in hand, trying to sound enthusiastic. All right, looks like our winner today is Danielle Foster. He clapped a little too fast. A few others joined in, their applause awkward, unsure whether to cheer or apologize. Danielle stood up and walked forward. No swagger, no smug grin. The prize was a gift card and a cheap plastic trophy. She took them both with a small nod, tucking them into her backpack like they were grocery receipts. Someone from the back, probably one of Jason's friends, mumbled under his breath. She must have gotten lucky. Danielle turned her head slightly, finally speaking loud enough for the whole room to hear. Luck doesn't group shots like that. There was a flicker, just a flicker of the old fire in her voice. The fire that used to come out when it really mattered. Nobody laughed this time. Nobody dared. But deep down, Danielle knew the questions had just started. And some of these people wouldn't be able to stop wondering. The crowd thinned out fast after that. Some packed up their rifles in tight silence. Others offered Danielle awkward nods as they slipped past her like she was some living legend. They weren't sure how to approach. Danielle didn't rush. She sat on the bench, wiping down her rifle with slow, deliberate movements. She could feel the tension swirling in the room, the way people stole glances, the way conversations fizzled out when she got too close. Jason lingered near the lockers, pretending to dig through his duffel bag. He kept peeking over like he wanted Ed to say something, but couldn't quite swallow his pride. Finally, he pushed off the wall and walked toward her. His boots scuffed loudly against the floor. You military? He asked, voice tight. Danielle didn't look up. Something like that. Jason shifted awkwardly, rubbing the back of his neck. You shoot like someone who's been doing it a long time. Danielle finally met his eyes. There wasn't anger there. No spite, just a steady, unblinking calm. Long enough, she said. Jason opened his mouth like he wanted to press further. Maybe ask what unit, where she served, how many tours. But something in Danielle's face told him he wouldn't get any answers he deserved. Instead, he cleared his throat and muttered, "Good shooting," before slinking back to his friends. Danielle finished packing up, slid her rifle back into the battered green case, and zipped it shut. The old woman from earlier, the one who'd offered the coffee, gave her a little wink as she passed by. Told you, she said softly. Sleeping, not gone. Danielle allowed herself a tiny smile. She swung the backpack over her shoulder and headed toward the parking lot. The late afternoon sun was brutal, baking the black top into waves of heat. Danielle didn't mind. She welcomed the weight of the heat pressing down. As she reached her car, a beat-up dark blue Honda Civic, a voice called out behind her. "Ma'am," it was the range manager jogging to catch up, clipboard flapping against his side. "You ever think about competing professionally?" he asked, panting a little. "We got connections. There's tournaments, big money, real opportunity." Danielle smiled politely, unlocking her door. "Not interested," she said. "Are you sure? I mean, with your skills." Danielle shook her head slowly. "I didn't come here to prove anything to anybody." She slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and let the soft rumble wash over her. As she pulled away, she glanced once in the rearview mirror. The shooting range grew smaller, smaller until it disappeared in the shimmering heat. And just like that, Danielle Foster melted back into the ordinary world. No medals, no headlines, no applause. Just a quiet woman carrying the weight of a life most people could never begin to understand. But somewhere deep inside, she knew today wasn't really about winning. It was about remembering who she still was, even after all this time. The road stretched out ahead, long and open, the desert sun painting everything in hard gold and soft shadows. Danielle tapped her fingers lightly against the steering wheel, letting the rhythm steady her heartbeat. She wasn't mad at the people back there. Not really. They didn't know her story. Didn't know about the years she spent crawling through dirt and concrete, heart pounding in her ears, waiting for a command she sometimes prayed wouldn't come. They didn't know about the lives she had to take, the ones she couldn't save, the promises she made in the silence afterward when nobody else was looking. Danielle didn't blame them for assuming things based on what they could see. Truth was, most people only understood what sat right in front of them. But every now and then it felt good to remind the world strength doesn't always look like armor. And real skill, the kind you can't fake, doesn't need permission to exist. At a red light, Danielle watched a father teaching his daughter how to ride a bike in the parking lot of a strip mall. The girl wobbled and nearly tipped over, but the dad caught her laughing. Danielle smiled to herself. She'd done enough fighting, for one lifetime. Now it was time to live small, live quiet, and find peace in the everyday things that didn't make headlines. She turned the corner, heading toward home. Her little apartment with the creaky floors, the overgrown plant on the balcony, and the book she'd left half-finished on the kitchen table. The trophy from the range clattered lightly in her back seat with every bump in the road, forgotten already. It didn't mean much, it never did. But the feeling she carried home, the quiet fire rekindled inside her, that was something nobody could take, because no matter how much the world underestimated her, Danielle Foster knew exactly who she was. And that was enough. And maybe, just maybe, somebody at that range would remember her the next time they thought they had somebody all figured out. Never judge someone's strength by what you see on the surface. Real power often moves quietly without asking for recognition. If you enjoyed this story, share it with someone who might need a reminder that real strength doesn't need to shout. Stay humble, stay sharp, and never forget who you